started out producing, you probably just learned your major and your minor scales only just to fall in the trap of using only major and minor chords and often ignoring this one. And you probably heard this chord before, and this is a diminished chord. And by itself, it doesn't really sound like much. That's probably why a lot of us didn't really start using it in our music. But this last week, I actually went to revisit this topic of diminished chords, and I found some unique tricks. So I want to show you guys 3 ways you can start using diminished chord in your loops and just make fire beats. Now, before we get into these 3 techniques, I'm gonna show you first how to build this chord. You could think about it like using a minor chord, you know, C, E flat, and then G. And then that will be your minor. And then you would just flat the 5th, and then this will be your diminished chord. But you know, in a musical sense, if you want to get all crazy, you just want to remember it by intervals. So it's all made up by minor thirds. So you have your C to your E flat. That's your first minor third, 2 notes in between 2 notes, and then another 2 notes in between 2 notes. So that would be from E flat and F sharp. That's how I like to approach it. It's just a lot easier later on when you come to building other chords. And also for the second way, I'm gonna show you guys. The first way is just to use it in a major scale. Don't think so crazy. You don't need to think about, what about in a minor? Like major and relative minor, just always remember that. A lot of times in music, you don't really need to know why things work instead of just using it in your music and riding with it. Like you're not coming up with something new under the sun. So it's just best to just, you know, play around, and then you learn as you go. The more inspired you get by having it in your music. You have the 5th of C major, which is G. And then if you sharp that, you could build a diminished chord from it. So this will be our G sharp. And then, you know, go to the minor third, which is going to be our B. And then from B, go to another minor third, which is going to be our D. Because if you go from G major like this, it's a nice passing chord to the 6th chord. So let's say your chord progression was like this. Even if you mess up, just still keep having fun with it. So I could just pretty much make any chord progression, and as long as I have the 5 and the 6 in the chord progression, then I can have that diminished chord right there. We could even start on A minor and do the 6-4-5, a very popular chord progression, like. Yeah, man, just have fun. Like, don't think too much about, oh, is this hard or not? I promise you, if you're just not judging yourself in the process, you're gonna come up with something dope, yo. Now, the second way is to use the diminished 7. So that's why I said remember intervals, because you could go from a minor third, so C to an E flat. That's the first. And then from E flat, we gotta build our another minor third, which is our F sharp. So from F sharp, we're gonna look for another minor third, which is our A. So this is our whole diminished 7. Now, how can we use this in our music? I would say use it on a tonic, which is, you know, C. So go from your C major, and then your diminished chord. Now, how can we finish a chord progression like that? Because that chord progression got to resolve back to something. Going from the C, doing that C diminished, and then going to an E minor. Now, why does that work? Because that chord plays most of the notes of C major. Remember, E minor is E, G, and then it has the B, but it played 2 notes. So, of course, it's just going to sound right, because it has 2 notes of the C major chord. We ain't got to get all technical, talk about this theory and all of that. Let's just hear how that would sound. C major, C diminished 7, E minor. That just sounds really nice. And I'm still thinking about all of this in the major scale. I remember seeing this video a long time ago. Dude was saying like, why you shouldn't really focus on scales. And this is when I was learning the major scales and the minor scales very heavy. And when I heard that, I'm like, dude, what are you talking about? But at the same time, I watched a lot of his videos, so I knew he was saying something important, and I just didn't understand at that point. But then more over the years, when you start learning about modulation and you know, borrowing chords and stuff, you realize like, oh, scales are just man-made. So therefore, if we just thought about chords from the beginning, we wouldn't get so caught up in like, oh, if I'm in the right scale or not, because our melody will go along with our chords. So therefore, I think chords are the most important thing to know. And if you learn that in the beginning versus like learning a scale, yeah, scales sure help because then, you know, you have the diatonic chords that you can play from. But if you train your ears while you was like just learning chords, I think that would have been a whole different point of view. So I actually made a drum pattern just to show you guys we can actually use these chords in our loops and our beats, and it doesn't have to be like its own cool piano melody on its own. Yeah, that's pretty fire. And another thing, when you have these complex ideas, it's really going to come down to the sound selection. Like I was trying out a few things before, and it didn't sound right with either just the piano itself, but you know, I had to really look for that sound, and I was like, yo, this is the sound right here. So when you go to make your own methods, you might think it sound boring on a piano until you put it on a different sound. And the last way is pretty simple, and all you have to do is just arpeggiate it. And just like that, you could keep it simple and just, you know, add in that diminished chord either at the end or, you know, in between the 5 or the 6 chord, and just kind of mess around and find other spots that you can do. And yeah, see, with diminished chords, there's a lot more that you can do with them as well. And that's why I made this video, so you guys can get a couple ways of how you can add it into your music. And then from there, keep messing around, keep making some dope music. Don't just like try it once and then be like, oh no, I gotta go back to learning. Like, nah, I think learning is also figuring it out on your own as well. Like, I'm a big fan of like always learning things before I do them. But at the same time, for your own growth, you do have to have your own way of how you approached it. Like, you may come across the same destination, but that's not what it's about. It's the journey to that destination. And then there is that kind of fulfillment when you're inspired to learn more after that. So if you like this video, like and subscribe, share with your other producer friends. And until next time, peace.